Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are taking a really close look at the architecture of the mind.
Yeah, specifically when the mind is operating, outside its usual state.
Exactly. We're diving into what are called non-ordinary states of consciousness, or NSCs.
Hmm.
Think Rajyoga meditation, hypnosis, and something called auto-induced cognitive trance.
And these states, they're fascinating, right? Because we fundamentally know they change how the brain works. I mean, for years we've seen altered brain waves, different connections lighting up.
Sure, functional connectivity, power bands, that's fairly established.
But the real mystery, and this is what we want you, the listener, to focus on, isn't just where the activity changes, but how the brain actually organizes and processes information internally when it's in these very specialized states.
Right. It's like knowing which instruments are playing versus understanding the whole symphony.
Precisely.
And our source for this is, well, it's a really cutting-edge study from NeuroImage. It was multicentric.
Which just means several different labs, specialized labs, work together on it, pooling data.
And they did something really crucial here. They moved beyond that traditional functional connectivity you mentioned, just asking if area A is talking to area B.
Yeah, the simple pairwise stuff.
Instead, they looked at high-order interactions.
Which is a total shift in perspective, really. If the old way was like looking at a simple phone call between two brain areas, this high-order approach is like analyzing a complex conference call, with maybe dozens of participants all interacting in complicated ways.
Okay, that makes sense. So how do they even measure that? It sounds complicated.
It is, mathematically speaking. They use tools derived from information theory, things like partial information decomposition, PID, and something called O information.
Okay, PIDO information. Sounds a bit intimidating. But what do these actually let researchers see that they couldn't before?
Well, fundamentally, they allow them to tease apart the quality of the information that's flowing through the brain's network. So we're tracking two key concepts, almost opposing forces: synergy and redundancy.
Synergy and redundancy.
Yeah.
Okay, this feels like the core idea we need to unpack.
It absolutely is. This is really the aha moment for this whole deep dive.
All right, let's break it down then. Redundancy. In terms of information flow, what does that mean in the brain?
Okay, so redundancy is basically shared information. It's duplicated. It's when multiple different areas in the brain are holding the exact same piece of data at the same time.
Okay, like a backup system.
Exactly, yeah. Or like broadcasting a message really widely so it definitely gets through, doesn't get lost. Makes the system robust.
So, using an example, maybe you see a red stop sign. Your visual cortex gets the red info, your attention network flags it, your motor planning area prepares to brake. If they all share that same basic red stop message simultaneously, that's redundancy.
Perfect example. Multiple copies, same message, available in many places at once.
Got it. So then what's synergy? You said it's the opposite.
It is, and it's arguably the more interesting part when we think about complex consciousness. Synergy is the unique, integrated insight. It's information that you can only get by looking at the activity of the whole system working together.
So it's not just shared copies.
No, it's the conclusion or the pattern or the idea that, say, area A, B, and C can figure out together, but none of them could figure out just on their own, or even in pairs.
So if redundancy is the simple broadcast, synergy is more like the complex calculation, or the novel idea that emerges only when you combine different streams of information.
Exactly. It's the brain integrating diverse inputs into a cohesive, global understanding. It's the emergent property.
Wow, okay. Thinking about these states through the lens of synergy versus redundancy,
Yeah.
that really does change things.
It completely reframes the questions we can ask.
So let's talk about the study setup itself. You mentioned different groups.
Right. It was ambitious because they brought together long-term practitioners from 3 quite different disciplines. They had 22 experienced Rajyoga meditators, zero point 0.9 volunteers who were specifically selected for being highly hypnotizable,
Interesting criteria.
and 21 practitioners of something called auto-induced cognitive trance, or AICT.
And the method was looking at changes within each person, right? Not comparing meditators directly to hypnotize people.
That's key, yeah. They compared each person's brain activity during their specific NSC state against their own baseline state. For the Rajyoga meditators, the baseline was just resting with eyes open.
Okay.
For the hypnosis and AICT groups, the baseline was resting with eyes closed. The goal was always to isolate the specific effect of that particular practice on that person's brain information architecture.
Makes sense. So let's dive into the results. First up, Rajyoga meditation. What did this synergy redundancy analysis show?
Okay, RM was really distinct. You could almost call it the integration state based on these findings. It showed very clear, significant increases in synergy.
More integration, more complex information.
Yes. And importantly, at the same time, significant decreases in redundancy.
Ah, so the brain isn't just adding complexity, it's also reducing the simple broadcast.
It seems like it's reorganizing itself, prioritizing that complex global integration over widespread duplication.
Where did the synergy increase show up? Was it localized or brain-wide?
It was pretty widespread, particularly noticeable across the whole brain in the slower frequency bands, specifically delta, which is 1 to 4 hertz, and theta, 4 to 8 hertz.
Delta. Isn't that usually linked with deep sleep? Seeing more synergy there during meditation seems counterintuitive.
It does at first glance, but the interpretation here is quite different. Increased synergy in delta during this conscious, meditative state is thought to relate to heightened self-awareness.
How so?
Well, one theory is that strong integrated delta activity might help actively inhibit incoming sensory information. It's like the brain is globally coordinating to shut the doors to external noise, allowing it to focus on the demanding internal task of meditation.
So it's not just zoning out, it's an active, controlled process of internal focus facilitated by this synergistic delta rhythm.
That seems to be the idea. It's about managing internal resources.
And the theta increase, what does that suggest?
Theta rhythms are often tied to things like processing emotions, memory access, and orienting attention. So seeing synergy jump up in theta suggests the whole system is working together to direct focus inward. It strongly implies increased internal focus, which, fits perfectly with the goals of Rajyoga meditation.
Okay, that paints a picture of a highly integrated, internally focused state. Now, what about the other side, redundancy going down? Where did that happen?
The drop in redundancy was also significant, particularly in delta, but also in the beta bands, beta 1, which is about 1220 hertz, and data 2, 2030 hertz.
And location-wise for that delta drop?
Yeah, they saw specific decreases in redundancy involving frontal areas, right, central electrodes, parietal, and even occipital regions in that delta band.
So less duplicated information floating around in those slow waves. What's the thinking there?
The interpretation is that there's less need for what you might call information broadcasters. If you're in deep meditation, actively choosing not to process or react to every little external stimulus or internal thought,
Right.
then the brain doesn't need to keep sending out multiple copies of that sensory data or those fleeting thoughts everywhere. It's like clearing the cognitive runway, reducing the noise.
So RM seems to shape the brain into this streamlined, highly integrated network. It focuses on complex internal processing, synergy goes up, while actively reducing the amount of shared, maybe distracting, redundant information.
That's a really good summary of the pattern they found for RM, but it's important to add a little caveat, the researchers noted.
Okay.
Even with these changes, the human brain overall seems to be a fundamentally redundant system. Across all conditions, baseline and NSC, the actual values for redundancy were always higher than the values for synergy.
Ah, I see. So RM shifts the balance toward synergy and away from redundancy, but it doesn't completely flip the script. Redundancy is still dominant overall.
Exactly. It's about the change, the delta, rather than the absolute levels.
Okay, that's clear. So if RM represents this path towards greater integration, what about the other two states? Hypnosis and auto-induced cognitive trance. Did they follow suit?
No, not at all, actually. They took a fundamentally different path. Both hypnosis and AICT were primarily characterized by widespread decreased synergy.
Decreased synergy, so less integration, less of that complex conference call type processing.
Precisely. Instead of amplifying it like RM, these states seem to reduce that high-order integration.
Let's dig into hypnosis first.
Yeah.
Where did synergy drop most significantly?
The researchers found significant decreases in synergy, especially again in that slow delta band. This was seen across midfrontal areas, temporal regions, and mid-centroparietal electrodes.
Delta again, like RM, but the opposite effect. Synergy going down instead of up.
Exactly.
So if we interpreted increased delta synergy in RM as heightened self-awareness and sensory inhibition, does decreased delta synergy in hypnosis suggest? Well, the opposite.
That's the leading interpretation, yes. Decreased synergy in these slower frequencies like delta and theta is thought to reflect reduced environmental awareness, and perhaps a modified, maybe even fragmented sense of self, which, aligns pretty well with the subjective experience often reported in hypnosis.
Right, you're less globally aware, more focused on the hypnotist's suggestions, perhaps letting go of that integrated self-monitoring.
It fits the picture. You're essentially reducing the need for that complex globally integrated awareness state to better follow specific, externally guided instructions or internal visualizations.
Were there changes in higher frequencies too for hypnosis?
Yes, they also saw synergy decrease in the beta 2 band around 20-30 hertz.
And beta is often linked to.
Sensory-motor processing, attention, active thinking. Seeing a drop in synergy there, particularly involving left frontal and right parietal areas, might reflect how attention is altered under hypnosis and how sensory or motor processing might be changed based on the hypnotist's suggestions.
Okay. And what about redundancy during hypnosis? Did that change? Did the broadcasting stop?
That was one of the surprising findings. No significant changes in redundancy were observed during hypnosis.
Really? So the brain is still broadcasting information widely?
It seems so. But it was either failing to, or perhaps choosing not to, integrate that information into those complex synergistic patterns. The raw data might be there, but the high-level synthesis isn't happening as much.
Fascinating. Okay, let's turn to the third state. AICT, auto-induced cognitive trance. Did it look similar to hypnosis?
Broadly, yes. It also showed widespread decreased synergy, again, notably in the delta and theta bands involving frontal and posterior brain regions. This mirrors that general theme of potentially reduced awareness or altered self-representation that we saw with hypnosis.
So another state showing reduced integration. Was there anything unique about AICT?
There's one very distinct signature for AICT, a significant whole brain decrease in synergy, specifically in the alpha band. That's roughly 8 to 12 hertz.
Alpha. Why is a drop in alpha synergy particularly important for understanding a trance state?
Well, alpha oscillations are thought to be really crucial for gating sensory input, managing the flow of sensory information into conscious processing.
Oh, yeah.
So seeing a global decrease in the synergy of alpha activity suggests that the brain's complex coordination of sensory perception is being fundamentally altered across the board.
Meaning, the way the brain usually integrates sights, sounds, feelings into a coherent whole is disrupted.
That's the implication. It provides a pretty clear objective marker that could underlie the altered or distorted sensory experiences that are often hallmarks of deep trance states.
Wow. So putting it together, we seem to have these two quite different neuroarchitectural profiles emerging.
Definitely.
Rajyoga meditation seems to leverage the brain's information architecture to boost complex global integration. Synergy goes up, redundancy goes down.
Right, enhancing internal complexity.
Whereas hypnosis and AICT seem to achieve their non-ordinary states by doing the opposite, reducing that synergistic integration either regionally or, in the case of AICT's alpha effect, globally.
Exactly. Synergy goes down, leading perhaps to reduced overall awareness or specifically altered sensory processing. The structural distinction in how information is handled seems profound. RM encourages convergence and integration. Hypnosis and AICT seem to involve a reduction in that convergence.
That distinction alone is a huge takeaway. But now we get to the part that, honestly, reading the study just completely blew my mind, and maybe yours too. The behavioral correlation.
Oh, yeah. This is the real head-scratcher, the moment of cognitive dissonance in the research.
Because the researchers didn't just collect EEG data, right? They collected subjective reports.
Meticulously. For the hypnosis and AICT groups, they had participants fill out questionnaires measuring things like absorption, how deeply involved they felt, in dissociation, that sense of detachment. For the AICT group, they also used the Mystical Experience Questionnaire, the MEQ.
Okay, standard stuff for trying to quantify the subjective feel of these states. So what happened when they tried to link the brain data, these big significant shifts in synergy and redundancy, to how people said they felt?
Absolutely nothing.
Nothing.
No significant correlations. The massive, measurable, objective changes in the brain's information architecture, the complete overhaul we just talked about, showed no statistical relationship with the participants' scores on how absorbed, dissociated, or mystical their experience felt.
Wait, hold on. So during Rajyoga meditation, for example, your brain is fundamentally reorganizing how it processes complex information globally.
Synergy way up, redundancy down.
But how absorbed or focused or in the zone the meditator reported feeling didn't track with that huge neural change.
Not in a statistically significant way, no.
What does that even mean? Is the brain activity irrelevant, or the questionnaires just missing the point?
That's the million-dollar question it raises, isn't it? It throws up this profound puzzle about the limits of self-report, especially for these, well, non-ordinary states.
It suggests that the objective structural patterns of information flow that define these states They're somehow separate from how the person consciously experiences and then rates that experience afterwards using our current tools.
That seems to be one strong possibility. The brain clearly knew it was operating differently. The synergy and redundancy metrics show that, but the person couldn't necessarily articulate or quantify that difference in a way that our questionnaires could capture.
It's almost like consciousness itself, or at least these altered states of it, might have layers, and maybe these high-order brain metrics are tapping into a deeper, maybe pre-reflective layer.
A layer that we just don't have the right language or the right scales to measure subjectively yet. It's fascinating and a bit humbling.
Definitely humbling. Now, before we let our listeners' minds completely explode with that thought, we should probably touch on these study limitations the authors themselves pointed out.
Yeah.
It's important context, right? Since this was really the first study using these specific high-order metrics in this way for NSCs.
Absolutely. Transparency is key. And because it was multicentric, pooling data from different labs, there were some inherent differences.
Like what?
Well, for instance, the hypnosis group turned out to be significantly younger on average than the RM and AICT groups. That's a potential confound.
Okay, age could affect brain signals.
And they also use different EEG amplifier systems and recorded in different lab environments across the 3 cohorts. That introduces potential variability.
Right, noise in the data potentially.
And one other thing, they didn't have a single set of behavioral questionnaires that were used across all 3 groups. So direct comparison of the subjective experience between, say, meditators and the hypnotized group wasn't really possible based on the collected data.
So some definite caveats that make direct comparison between the groups tricky.
Yes, but they did do some statistical checks. And the analysis suggested that the within-subject changes, they saw the increase in synergy for RM, the decrease for hypnosis AICT, seemed to be independent of those age differences.
Okay, so that helps strengthen the core finding, that these architectural shifts are likely a real effect of the state itself, not just an artifact of who was in the scanner or which machine they used.
It helps validate it, yes. Despite the limitations, the core pattern seems robust.
Okay, so let's try and bring this all together for you, the listener.
Yeah.
This deep dive, it really gives us a new kind of roadmap, an objective, quantifiable way to look at the structure of these non-ordinary states.
Yeah, we've established that measuring synergy and redundancy, these high-order information dynamics, it provides a really powerful method to actually define the distinct information processing architectures at play.
And we saw clear differences. Rajyoga meditation seems to promote integration, complexity, internal focus. It pushes synergy up and redundancy down.
While hypnosis and AICT seem to achieve their altered states primarily by reducing synergy, leading to maybe reduced integration, less connection to the environment, or specifically altered sensory gating.
The structural difference in information handling is clear. RM integrates. The others reduce integration, broadly speaking.
But the link to the subjective experience, that's where it gets murky.
And that, I think, leads us directly to the final provocative thought we want to leave you with today.
Right. We have these objective, high-order brain activity metrics, synergy and redundancy, that changed significantly and in very distinct ways across all 3 of these non-ordinary states. Clear, physical, measurable shifts in brain processing.
Yet, these objective changes did not correlate in any significant way with the participants' own subjective reports, how absorbed, how dissociated, how mystical they felt their experience was.
So we're left with this disconnect, this gap.
Are these objective patterns, the synergy and redundancy shifts happening deep in the brain during NSCs? Are they capturing fundamental aspects of consciousness, its very architecture perhaps?
Aspects that our current subjective questionnaires, our attempts to ask how did that feel, are simply failing to measure.
It really does seem like the brain might have a secret language for describing these states, a language based on information architecture.
And we're only just beginning to build the dictionary to decipher it.